If you're anything like me, you'll have seen quite a few error messages from Excel in the past. We all get them, but what do they mean and how can we avoid them? In this tutorial, we look at some of the most common and find out why they are there and how we can fix them. This session is all about Excel's error messages, and I've got examples of many of the common errors that generate an error message, and I'd like to go through them with you and demonstrate how we can fix them. I've got a little sample set of data, and the first error message that we can see is this one here, which is the hash marks, and they are inserted automatically simply because it doesn't have enough room to display the actual figures. Easiest way to solve that is just to double click the border between the two columns. That automatically widens the column to the width of the widest entry. So that's the first sample and how to fix it. The next one is one that I'm sure everybody has come across, and it's this one here in cell B12, div/0. So the way to deal with this is I'm going to click on the cell itself, and that does two things. Firstly, it shows me in the formula bar what the formula is, and it also pops up this little yellow warning triangle. If you hover over that, you'll see a little message there saying the formula or function used is dividing by 0 or empty cells. Okay, now Excel hates spaces, so if it's an empty cell, it regards it as an error. Now, if you want to know how to fix it, you can click on that and you can get help on this error. It'll show you the calculation steps. You can choose to ignore it or you can edit in the formula bar. I always think the best way of dealing with this is actually to look at the formula and find out what's going wrong. So if we have a look at it, you'll see that we are dividing here the sum of D5 to D10. So that's the profit column, D5 to D10. And we're dividing that by the sum of, it should be net sales, B5 to B10, but in fact it's a typo. Somebody's typed in A5 to A10, which of course refers to text. It's just treating it as blanks, in other words zeros, and the way we can cure that is simply by highlighting the figures and replacing them with the correct ones. If I hit enter now, bingo, there we are. So that now tells me that the profit percentage is 66, but it's being formatted as currency. I'm just going to simply change that to a percentage simply by clicking on the percentage symbol in the currency group. The next one is slightly more complicated, but this is looking for a name. Now, when you see name, this error is caused because the word sum has been misspelt. Once again, if we click in the cell, and have a look. Oh yes, look at this. So we've got an equals, then an @ symbol, and sum is actually spelled with two M's. Once again, if you hover over the little yellow warning triangle, you can see that the solution to this is that the formula contains unrecognized text. The simplest way of dealing with this is just simply to go to the formula bar, ignore that error message that's come up, just get rid of that and put in the correct function, which in this case is the sum function. And there we are. You can now see that the sum of D5 to D10 is now working perfectly well. Okay, the next error message, N/A. This refers to a formula or a function inside that can't find the reference data. So let's have a look at it and see what it's looking at. Right, so we've got a VLOOKUP function here. All right, once again, hovering over the little yellow warning triangle, a value is not available to the formula or function. Again, have a look at what we're trying to do here. This is a VLOOKUP, so the first thing the VLOOKUP wants to know is this figure here, which is the lookup value. Okay, if you highlight it and then look at the tooltip, it tells you what it's looking for. So we're looking for the lookup value here, and we're looking for VAT rate. But if you look at the rest of it, you can see that I5 to J6, this reference over here is completely wrong. The right reference should be over here. So what we're looking for is the VAT rate, and the VAT rate is in these two columns here. So once again, I'm going to correct that simply by highlighting the incorrect range, I5 to J6, and replacing it with the correct range, which in fact is G5 to H6. And we're looking for the second column from the left, hence the 2 after the range. Hit enter. That's better, isn't it? The VAT is 0.2, in other words, 20%. Once again, for clarity, I'm just going to move back and turn that into a percentage. Then we come on to the VAT. If you're not from the UK, VAT stands for Value Added Tax, and it's a sort of sales tax that we have in this country. So the VAT for this is ref error message this time. So again, I'm going to click in there, hover over the little yellow warning, and it says moving or deleting cells caused an invalid cell reference, or function is returning a reference error. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, this is caused because there's an invalid reference in the formula. Okay, and if you look at the formula, you can see that we've got the sum of an error message. So we're trying to add up ref and then multiply that by the percentage for VAT, which is also incorrect. So I'm going to double click in there and take out the word ref and also the exclamation mark. And what we want is the VAT, and that is based on the net sales figure. So where we've got the sum function, we need to reference the cells that make up the sales, so B5 to B10. And then again in here, I've got 17.5%. I don't want that. I want this figure here, which is A5. Hit enter, and there we are. We can now see that the value added tax comes to 2970. The next one is a value error message. So again, I'll click in the cell and have a look at the yellow warning triangle. A value used in the formula is of the wrong data type. Okay. Right. So sales less VAT. Again, if you have a look at the formula, you'll see that we are summing B5 to B10 and then subtracting A15. We should be subtracting B15. Okay. So once again, all I've got to do is highlight that and correct the reference to B15 and hit enter. Yay. There we go. And then finally, we come to num. Now, this is a much rarer message, but it's displayed when the formula uses numeric data that is not valid for the current operation. And what we're doing here is trying to calculate the cash flow. Now, the cash flow uses a function called IRR. You can see the name of it over here in column J. IRR stands for internal rate of return, and it must start with a negative number. So what we're looking for is IRR, and then again, we've got the sales figures here, B5 to B10. So again, I'm going to highlight those cells so that I can replace them with the correct ones, starting with a negative value. So I'll select J5 to J11 and then hit enter. And again, that now solves the problem for us. We're actually returning a cash flow of a very healthy 15%. So there we are. That's a quick tour of error messages in Microsoft Excel. So I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to this channel. We have lots more Microsoft 365 tutorials on udemy.com, and you'll find a discount link in the description, especially for YouTube viewers. So I'll see you on the next tutorial. Bye for now.